Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 31 of MAME Politics. How's everybody doing today? I did a fuck up and started a stream and then stopped it really quick because my mic wasn't working. So hopefully you guys went to the right stream here, if anybody is here yet. I'm just going to hop over to the chat, say hello to everybody. Hey, Tom. How's it going? Hey, No Name. Hi, Alex. Hi, Nisa Power Rockets. How's it going? Sorry if I have trouble pronouncing some of your usernames. This one's going to be really hard for me. Hi, Onikitten XOXO. How's it going? Hey, Unbuttered Toast. Hey, Adam. Hey, John. Hey, Peppo. How are you all guys doing today? How's everybody doing today? The day before Valentine's Day. Alex Everson. What are you talking about? Alex Everson says, Robbie, how did you predict that scene in Joker with Bruce Wayne so accurately? What? I haven't seen the Joker yet, so I'm assuming you're talking about the scene where I said that I hope the Joker doesn't walk up to a child Bruce Wayne and make a smile on his face and say, "Why so serious?" So tell me what they did in the movie Joker. Nice. Unbuttered Toast says drunk, LOL. Hey Trish, how's it going? Hey the Bastard Palace, how are you? Wait a second. Peppo Aleppo said that scene where he makes the kid Bruce Wayne smile? That's not real, is it? Wait, what? Wait, so that was actually child Bruce Wayne in the trailer? That's fucking sad. I kind of honestly am boycotting Joker a little bit because I know Struggle Session guys liked it a lot. I know Abby liked it to some extent, but I really am attached to my DC Comics properties. And yeah, I mean, it's a real shit show what they've done to the DC universe. I mean, Shazam, the movie, was maybe closer to what like I would expect a DC Universe movie to be, but it was still not very good. Um, that's so weird that that scene actually happens in the movie. Um, you hated Shazam, says John. Yeah, I didn't hate it. I just thought it was. I thought the lighthearted tone of it was more um, appropriate. But yeah, the fact that Black Adam wasn't even in the movie was weird. And I thought they were hyping it up for years as it was going to be The Rock was going to play Black Adam. Some of that didn't materialize. Um, yeah, so if you guys see what's up on the screen right now, um, I was planning on playing for you Samurai Showdown, which is a game made by SNK, the company that put out the Neo Geo arcade system and console system. And I was always really fond of Samurai Showdown as a kid when I would play games in the arcades. Like Samurai Showdown came out around the same time Mortal Kombat 2 came out. I remember that. And it was pretty popular actually. Like it attracted a kind of a crowd at the arcade. But since it was competing against Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, it didn't really stand much of a chance. Um, but this game is, I think, is really interesting. It has a lot of stuff in it that Street Fighter didn't add until later, like things like breakers, sort of where like parries and stuff like that. There are certain things that Samurai Shodown actually had in the first iteration of its game, which other Capcom fighters used from later. The PAL meter. I think that Super Street Fighter 2 at that point had already had a PAL meter, so it wasn't new. But Samurai Shodown is just a really cool game for a lot of reasons. A great cast of characters, lots of interesting special moves. In terms of special moves, they're a little more diverse than like a Capcom Street Fighter game. I would say the special move style is more in the vein of Mortal Kombat. There are paralyzing moves. There are like teleportation moves. There's invisibility moves. There's a lot of stuff like that in the game. And there's not a whole lot of fighting games you can point to, and say that game is unique and actually like brought something new to the table and sort of changed fighting games. But I would argue Samurai Shodown is one of those games, and there's probably maybe only under 5 fighting games franchises that did that. Street Fighter obviously being one, Mortal Kombat being another, Samurai Shodown being another, X-Men Children of the Atom being another, and I would say that probably Virtua Fighter. Those 5 games I think really fundamentally define pretty much all the fighting games that we play now. And maybe not everyone would agree with me that Samurai Shodown played that big of a role, but I really think it did. And I think that it's, generally speaking, it's not hailed as much of a classic fighting game as I think it should be. Games like Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting, King of Fighters, these are other fighting games SNK made that I think are actually quite inferior games in a lot of ways. Not just graphically and aesthetically, but gameplay-wise. So this has been a game that I've appreciated for a really long time. I never really actually played the first one a whole lot at home. I had part 2 through 4 on my Neo Geo CD console when I got one of those when I got out of high school. I found one on eBay for a pretty good price. Bought a bunch of bootleg SNK Neo Geo CD games and ended up playing a lot of Samurai Shodown 2, 3, and 4. I'd say 3 was probably the one that I played the most. Alex Everson says Tekken was pretty influential. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that's true. I think I'm probably, I have bias against all 3D fighting games, so I would say Virtua Fighter, really set the template for that. Even though Tekken did sort of change the way all the other 3D fighting games behaved afterwards, it still, in my opinion, was very dependent on the existence of Virtua Fighter, not just because it was 3D, but because of the more realistic movements that you can jump on top of your opponent when they go on the ground. That specifically comes from Virtua Fighter. You can get ring out. I think that also comes from Virtua Fighter. I don't know. Is that in Tekken? Can you get ring out in Tekken? Carl Knight, Virtua Fighter was actually the first 3D fighting game ever made. And it was in the arcades. They did do a translation of it to the Sega Genesis and 32X, actually. And the 32X version kind of plays, and it has 3D graphics similar to the arcade. The Genesis version is pretty unplayable and bizarre that they would have even translated it to Sega Genesis. I'm trying to think. It was actually a really, really cool fighting game for the Sega Saturn was, I don't know if you guys have played this, but one of my favorite 3D fighting games ever was a Sega Saturn game called Fighters Megamix. And it had Fighting Vipers, which was a Virtua Fighter spin-off game that was another 3D fighting game made by Capcom. And it had Virtua Fighter characters, it had Sonic characters, and it had a bunch of other random like Sega characters. It was like a Sega-themed 3D fighting Megamix game, and it was fucking rad. Bird Worldist, yes, Killer Instinct did change fighting games too. I would say the only thing that Killer Instinct really contributed in terms of the changing fighting game gameplay was dial-up combos and customizable dial-up combos, chain combos. That was a big deal. But it kind of fighting game people kind of turned against those. They already started to dislike them by the time Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 was in arcades. And the fighting game community, I feel like, kind of turned generally against the idea of like dial up combos. It was just a bunch of sort of memorization. Even though I think Killer Instinct's dial up combo system is really unique, and I don't know if anyone's really duplicated that style of dial up combo system since. And I remember really trying to learn it as a kid when I had the SNES version of Killer Instinct and realizing this is really deep. Like you can learn, it takes you like a week to learn all one, one character's, all their combinations and stuff. So to be able to become that much of an expert, like some of those people were back then, learning all those customized dial-ups, I mean, it took an incredible amount of memorization and skill. Mortal Kombat 3, less so. You could learn a few dial-ups, and generally speaking, you could try them out on most of their characters, and most of the time they would work. Most dial-ups on Mortal Kombat would start from the high punch going down to low punch, and then either start with high kick after that or low kick. So you could kind of do some guesswork. Killer Instinct was a little more elegant, I think, in the way that they did it. But I still don't. I mean, I still prefer Mortal Kombat, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, definitely. But Unbuttered Toast, I think, asked, or maybe someone else did. Sorry if I'm getting your name wrong. Asked if there's anything more about Bloomberg and 9/11. Well, one of our great chat participants, who is someone that I met online a couple of years ago, I think, because he made some really great clips of my film series, A Very Heavy Agenda. He goes under the name Bayonets and Harmonicas in this chat. He actually just randomly pulled out something amazing, which I don't know if he was digging for this for very long or if he just found it instantly, but something like within, I don't know, I posted some pictures of Bloomberg standing next to Larry Silverstein unveiling the new World Trade Center 7 building. And Bayonets and Harmonicas, like within an hour of me posting that, posted an article from some website called China.org. I don't really know if it's a Chinese government website or what. But here's what the article says that Bayonets and Harmonicas pulled up. And I found this very fascinating. And I think you guys will too. Hey, Peter H. How's it going? Thank you for your very generous donation, Peter. That was really cool of you. And I hope you had a great birthday as well. Adam G, you need to learn how to research on the internet better, he says. I love digging the internet. Adam G, some suggestions of how to do that. I've been finding one of the best ways to do that recently is to search for things on search engines like Google using before dash and typing a year. It's very, very hard to dig for things, like especially if you're trying to dig for stuff about Bloomberg right now. You type anything in about him on Google, you'll only find stuff about this election for the most part, unless you keep going to the down the pages, like you go all the way down to like page 5, page 6, you'll start finding things that are older. But if you're trying to find out something about anybody's past, you pretty much have to now on Google say before dash a certain year. So in terms of Bloomberg, if I want to find stuff that's particularly juicy about him in the Iraq War, for example, search for things before the Bush administration left office. So before dash 2007, before dash, even before the first election. So like before dash 2005. So for example, I type Michael Bloomberg, Iraq, before dash 2005, and you'll find only stuff from the internet that was published before 2005. So that technique is really useful. It's a simple technique, but it's actually one of the most useful ones out there. Another good digging technique is, that's a pretty good one. History Commons. People have already done most of the digging for you. If you're trying to look for stuff having to do with 9/11, If you're looking for stuff having to do with the war on terror or the Bush era, History Commons is fantastic. There's a lot of data points there. And from there, like, for example, researcher Graham McQueen, who made probably one of the best anthrax books that's out, he used History Commons as the basis for that research project. And in a conversation with him, it becomes very obvious that it's like, that's a springboard to do your own digging. From there, you can hone in on these individual data points and try to find more examples of that story being reported. And then sometimes it's a little more easy. Like, for example, if you just search like Rudy Giuliani and anthrax, you'll find immediately lots of really weird things about his bizarre, suspicious as fuck anthrax cleanup company. You don't have to search like before a certain year for that, because it's an obscure enough topic. So if you link usually a name with an obscure enough topic, that's a pretty good way too. So the more obscure your research subject is, you'll usually almost have more luck just by blind internet searching. The more general and the more results you're getting, you pretty much have to narrow things down. And that's really the best advice I can give someone who wants to just do like internet sleuthing about this kind of stuff. But there's already some people in this chat who are excellent researchers. John Gold is one of the most seasoned internet sleuth researchers that I know. I mean, just the amount of links that he's compiled together on his own websites and on his blog postings and everything. I mean, then John is also really, really up on the news too. So yeah, I mean, maybe John could give some people some advice in here on how to research, how he learned how to do that, where he cut his teeth doing that. Because I don't think I actually talked to John about that before. Bayonets and harmonicas. I don't know what his background is, and I don't think he's in this chat today, but he seems to be a pretty incredible researcher, and just in terms of what he's been able to pull up randomly. Like, I'll see some stuff of his, and I'm like, wow, like how did you find that so quickly? So I don't know what skills he's using. But next time he's in this chat, he can talk about it. But yeah, Adam, John says, I did a lot of fucking reading and monitored 9/11 news daily for well over a decade and a half. How did you monitor 9/11 news daily, John? Is there a specific way that you like to do that? Because I'm imagining you probably started doing that before Google News was useful, right? I mean, did you even use Google News at any point in doing this? What was your strategy for monitoring the news for 9/11 related info? John says he built relationships with family members, 9/11 first responders, whistleblowers, and journalists. Oh, and God, unbuttered toast. You just reminded me. I don't know what you're thanking me for in your comment, but you just reminded me. I went off on a total tangent. What bayonets and harmonicas pulled up that I wanted to mention that I thought was insane about Michael Bloomberg is this little article from China.org from like 2002, I think. And the article section that he pulled up says, quote, New York authorities' decision to ship the Twin Towers scrap to recyclers has raised the anger of victims' families and some engineers who believe the massive girders should be further examined to help determine how the towers collapsed. So my comment here is, of course, that's a given. To investigate this unprecedented building collapse, even if you're not a truther, just like, how did this happen? How can we prevent a building from collapsing this way in the future if there's some kind of emergency or unexpected event? Continuing with the article. But New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg insisted there are better ways to study the tragedy of September 11th. He says, if you want to take a look at the construction methods and the design, that's in this day and age what computers do, said Bloomberg, a former engineering major. Just look at the piece of metal. Just looking at the piece of metal generally doesn't tell you anything. Oh, really? Oh, really, Michael? So there's Michael Bloomberg trying to dissuade anybody from looking at the actual steel. Um, Not saying that's any kind of a smoking gun or anything, but that's very odd. Why would he even have an opinion on that? And why would they even just like defer to his authority and say he's an engineering major? Well, as an engineering major, of course, you'd want to still preserve some of that material. That's what a forensic investigation is. It's absolutely fascinating to me that there'd be anyone in any position of authority dissuading people from wanting to do a forensic investigation of what happened to the Twin Towers. Um, so that's really notable to me that Michael Bloomberg is on record doing that. And I think that it's time we start talking about the very high likelihood that Michael Bloomberg was an integral part of the 9/11 narrative and cover up. He became mayor in January of 2002. So, for all the talk that I do here about Rudy Giuliani, um, he was only mayor. He's already basically leaving his post as mayor by the time 9/11 happened. I mean, the election happened in November, but he wasn't there for very long. A lot of the initial decisions about shipping the steel to China and things like that, and getting rid of it so fast, were Giuliani's idea. But the continuing cover up of that, and making sure all those cracks were sealed, and keeping that ship afloat, would be really Michael Bloomberg's wheelhouse. So I think that's really fascinating to look at. And this is going to be something I'm going to do a really deep dive on. So this is just cursory information that I'm giving you. Michael Bloomberg was integral in basically trying to stave off settlement payouts for first responders who were dying of cancer. He played the hero role and acted like he was doing a good thing for the first responders. But towards the end of those lawsuits, he was basically putting out editorials and putting out propaganda all throughout the mainstream media, because he's a billionaire, saying that the first responders should just take the settlement. It was better for them to do it. That it was going to be a protracted legal battle, and in the end, they might not even get the money. So you guys just take the money, take it and shut up. And he even used like first responders who had kowtowed to him, or not first responders, but their spouses and relatives of dead first responders, and used them as examples of why the other first responders should kowtow and settle with this New York City settlement. So there's got to be a lot of really bad stuff there. I mean, just in terms of the environmental hazards after 9/11, I mean, a lot of that blame can go to people like Rudy Giuliani and Christine Todd Whitman, I think was the EPA head at the time. But, we need to look more closely at what Michael Bloomberg's role was in the post 9/11 cover up, because we know, and I'm sure most of you in this chat would agree, that there was a major post 9/11 cover up, not just on the federal level and on the White House level, but also in the New York City level. You need to think about those. There was a cover up on many different levels. White Seed. If you're talking about the Lone Gunman pilot episode, apparently Dean Haglund, the guy who plays Frohickey, I think in the Lone Gunman, the long-haired blonde guy, the actor who plays him, one of the earliest episodes of the Alex Jones show I ever saw from like the early 2000s was that guy from the Lone Gunman telling Alex Jones that Chris Carter would have these cast party meetings, and at all the cast party meetings they had a CIA minder who would feed ideas to the show writing staff. He didn't have any evidence that that's where the Lone Gunman pilot idea came from, but he agrees fully that it's extremely bizarre and way too much of a coincidence. So, but think about the X-Files. I mean, it basically was, in a way, kind of like milking conspiracy culture and creating a mass entertainment product out of it. Even though I'm personally like a huge fan of the X-Files, I always really dug it, and it's actually still one of my favorite shows on TV. But I don't think we can deny that there's probably something funny going on there in terms of not just the UFO stuff and the alien stuff. I'm talking about like the government conspiracy stuff. For example, like the X-Files movie opens up with a building that looks exactly like the Oklahoma City building being blown up with a bomb. And it like looks exactly like the bomb blast. And the whole movie centers around this idea that they're basically trying to destroy some infected alien bodies inside this federal building, and they wanted to cover it up by blowing the building up. I mean, so it's kind of fascinating because that's sort of like pulling things a little bit from like conspiracy culture or alternate investigations on Oklahoma City, but then putting a layer of like sci-fi ridiculousness over it. Yes, Ruben Garcia, X-Files conflated conspiracies with paranormal investigations. Exactly. Yes. Yes. You know what's another great show that I think is actually probably one of the most underrated shows of all time? I would easily put it in my top 5 or maybe top 10. I don't know if I'll make it in my top 5, but the show Millennium, it is an X-Files spin-off. It's supposed to take place actually in the same universe, even though the characters never interact. Is an excellent show. Millennium is one of my favorite shows ever. And it's hard to find it streaming online these days, but if you like the X-Files and you want to get more of that, the show Millennium is amazing. And there's actually that show delves more into secret societies, because the whole concept of the show is that there's a secret group, deep state group called the Millennium Group, that believes in the occult, but they actually have all these deep connections to law enforcement. And in the show, there's all these like rivalries where like members from the group try to steal some wood pieces from the original crucifixion, and there turns into this like turf war where there's like all these assassinations and stuff. It's a pretty fucking awesome show. It's really great. And yeah, Jason, you know what I'm talking about. How's it going, dude? You just joined us while I was going off on a tangent from originally talking about Bloomberg's 9/11 connections, Jason. So here's another thing I wanted to pull out about Bloomberg. And this wouldn't surprise anyone. This does not surprise anyone, but I think that people need to know these things. All we're talking about right now is how he's a racist. Well, obviously he's a racist for doing stop and frisk. But what was stop and frisk? Was it just about race? Was it just racist, or was it also kind of flavored or juked up by the war on terror? I think that what you'll find is the policy actually has some linkages to the fictional bullshit war on terror. And I'm not saying it wasn't a racist policy. Obviously it was, but the ability to stop and frisk any New Yorker, how many Muslims or Arab people, Middle Easterners in Queens got stopped and frisked after 9/11? I mean, do we even know that? John Gold says it targeted Muslim neighborhoods. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, and I don't actually know this for a fact, I just think we can assume that's the case based on the climate in New York City after 9/11. But there's plenty of evidence points for this. I mean, if you weren't listening to a previous episode of this show, Michael Bloomberg is a neocon. He is good friends with some of the most dangerous neocons you can imagine. Michael Bloomberg spoke at the 2004 RNC. He openly supported the Iraq War and openly was supporting Bush during the Iraq War. Now, probably one of the only smart things that Michael Bloomberg did when he got in office was he didn't appoint Bernard Kerik to be his, I believe, the police commissioner. Now, Bernard Kerik, if you're not familiar with him, is the convicted felon who was literally the first person on camera any official to say that no, he told the reporter, no, there was no evidence that explosives were used in any of the buildings. They collapsed from like a pancake style. He doesn't say this exactly, but during a press conference on the day of 9/11, like at 5 p.m., Bernard Kerik, who worked under Rudy Giuliani, gives the official story of how the building collapsed before any investigations were done at all. Bernard Kerik was later rewarded, probably, by the Pentagon. He was appointed by Donald Rumsfeld to be the Iraq occupation vice governor, working under Paul Bremer, who also said some very suspicious things about 9/11 as well, if you'll remember Paul Bremer. Kevin Ryan actually writes, he does a really good breakdown on Paul Bremer in his book, Another 19. He also does a really good breakdown on Rudy Giuliani in his book, Another 19. I don't know if he breaks down Bernard Kerik specifically in that book, but he also goes after Jerome Corsi, who was another New York City government, or not Jerome Corsi, Jesus Christ. Jerome Corsi. He goes after also Jerome Hauer, also known as Jerry Hauer, who worked on all these counterterrorism policies under Rudy Giuliani. But let me read you a section from a book about Bloomberg that I found last night. When Bloomberg decided not to appoint Bernard Kerik for whatever reason, and this is before Bernard Kerik actually went to jail for taking Israeli bribes. This is weird, right? Michael Bloomberg decided to hire Raymond Kelly, who comes from an intelligence background. Raymond Kelly, I think this is his name. I want to make sure I'm getting his name wrong. Get his name right. I just want to make sure I'm talking about the right person. Is it Raymond Kelly? John, you would probably know this. I just copied and pasted something with his last name on it, so I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. But I'll just read his last name. But anyways, this guy Kelly, I believe his name is Raymond Kelly. He was a 35-year veteran of the CIA. Bloomberg tapped him at a pay cut. So the fact that this guy, a spook, would want to work as Mayor Bloomberg's police commissioner at a huge pay cut after 9/11 is in and of itself suspicious. In and of itself, it deserves some kind of scrutiny and exploration. Why would a former spook want to be in control of the police in New York City at a pay cut? What's the deal with that? Was he just so patriotic he wanted to fight terrorists in New York? Uh-oh. Were you trolling Jason, Bird? Yeah. I almost kind of feel sad for the toll cells that tried to troll this chat. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this, but the one that I banned from the chat is now going around Twitter saying that Abby and I are CIA. So he went from 0 to 10 really quick there. He was saying he was still a fan of ours, and that we were hypocritical about Bernie, and then 2 days later he's on Twitter saying that we're both CIA. So can't win them all, guys. Propagander. Yes. You said the name that we shall not name in this chat. Speaking of problematic figures, did anyone watch or did anyone read Caitlin Johnstone's article that's been floating around? I haven't seen one of her articles go viral in a while. But for some reason this one went viral. And it came through my news feed a bunch today. 5 people posted it. Where it's basically the premise of the article, and I agree with the headline of the article. It's generally, oh God, I completely forgot to fucking mention the thing I was going to mention. Sorry, I got very sidetracked there, guys. About Caitlin Johnston of all people. Jesus Christ. So here's from a book about Michael Bloomberg. And this is the police commissioner that he hired talking. I worked in Washington, remember? Kelly would say later. So he decided he would have to protect the city with his own local version of the FBI and the CIA. Bloomberg relished the idea of creating the city's own intelligence operation, especially when Kelly managed to nab a 35-year veteran of the Central Intelligence Agency, David Cohen. So I was actually misstating earlier. Kelly was not a 35-year veteran of the CIA. David Cohen, this guy that he hired to work directly under him, was. Kelly is a Washington, D.C. guy. He's not, I don't think he's a spook. So David Cohen is actually the spook that I was referring to earlier. So my mistake. So the book continues. Here was a spy's spy, and he would now be running New York City's secretive intelligence operation. At the press conference announcing the new intelligence squad, reporters trying to get a little bit of biographical information asked Cohen his age. He replied that he was between 28 and 70. What the fuck? Cohen hired 700 police officers who spoke 50 languages and dialects from Egyptian Arabic and Farsi to Spanish spoken in Mexico and the Caribbean. During the Bloomberg-Kelly years, terrorists failed at 16 attempts to attack the city. So let me read that again in case you guys didn't believe that on its face, because it's ridiculous sounding. During the Bloomberg-Kelly years, terrorists failed at 16 attempts to attack the city. So, hey guys, there were 16 attempted Al-Qaeda attacks on New York. Bloomberg and Kelly stopped them all. This guy's a real hero, right? I mean, is this amazing? 16 attacks? That's fucking great. And I don't know if you guys remember this. The most famous of those attacks, or thwarted attacks, is the Times Square bomber. Do you guys remember this? How much hype there was around this shit in 2010? Do you remember this shit? The Times Square bomber? It was actually probably the most hyped up thwarted terrorist attack ever in the United States. And I'm not kidding. I know it might be hard to remember that because there's been so much other crazy shit that's been happening since then. But this Times Square bombing attempt was a really big deal, and New York City and even the White House made a really big deal about it. It could have been another 9/11, guys. Bloomberg stopped it. He's a hero. Also, how weird is it that Bloomberg not only got sent a ricin letter that had real ricin in it, according to the FBI, and an anthrax letter? I mean, what a lucky guy. He got sent 2 different letters years and years apart of the 2 different weapons of choice that the neocons always warn that the terrorists are going to use against us. It's kind of fascinating. Hey, Bayonets, I was just giving you a shout out. Yeah, dude, Jason, be my hype man. We can do better than this shit. Bayonets and harmonicas. I was just telling people that based on what I know about you and my interactions with you, you seem like a very savvy, skilled researcher. Even though I don't know what you do beyond being on social media and talking to us, I'm curious because you seem to be more than just a casual, internet sleuth. You seem to have pretty good research skills. And I was just telling the chat what you pulled up about Bloomberg and not wanting to, trying to dissuade people from looking at the steel rubble from 9/11, and how fascinating that was. I mean, who would do that? What authority does he think he has to do that? I mean, it's very suspicious. I wouldn't say it's a smoking gun that he's that he's involved in the 9/11 cover-up, but it's pretty fucking up there. I mean, that alone is pretty suspicious. I think that's a glaring thing to me that sticks out now. Whenever I look back at any old news about 9/11, anybody who's like, no, this is how it fell. Like, we don't need to investigate this. What? Like, anybody who says anything like that is hella suspect. Extremely suspect. This is one of the biggest things that has ever happened in the United States. 3,000 people were killed. Yeah, I don't see our mod. Furious Psyop is not in here. So we're unmodded today. So you guys are going to have to rely on my modding skills. But I want to make a promise to you guys again that I won't let another troll derail the episodes of the show. It might derail the chat. And if that happens, I'll probably ban them if they're really being disruptive. But if they're just trolling a little bit, I'm probably just gonna ignore the chat and just continue to do the episode and still talk to you guys. Um, so yeah, I just make a promise not to like get distracted and actually bog down the episode and fucking start arguing with one troll while all you guys are in here trying to have a good time. I mean, I was honestly disappointed in myself for doing that. Um, so yeah, Ruben Garcia, they didn't really derail it. It's just that basically half of the episode turned into me arguing with one guy in the chat, who was really into Tulsi. It was in the Ghouls and Ghosts episode of MAME Politics, which is a hidden episode on Patreon. Jason Burmis says, true story. Someone I have known for decades who does waste removal on an industrial level tipped me that there was an open contract his boss bid on to get rid of the rest of the WTC wreckage. Whose boss? Who are you referring to, Jason? Are you referring to Bloomberg? Because I'm sure that was very compartmentalized. I mean, what it sounds like in Kevin Ryan's book is that Rudy Giuliani used a bunch of separate companies that didn't keep very good records. So it's very fascinating that they tracked all the rubble as it was being like transferred to the dump. They were very conscientious about that, but once it was sent there, they didn't give a shit. There's like very, very little paper trail about where it all went after that. Trish, Furious Psyops is Earth Acolytes on Twitter. He's definitely interacted with us before. He's been a Media Roots fan for a long time. Um, oh, you were contacted several months ago. Fascinating. So Jason, does that mean that there are still? Oh wow. So there's still rubble that's still maybe they're trying to dispose of. That's very interesting. Speaking of Michael Tracy, and I have to say, his name has come up more on this show than almost anybody else in media. So I have to dial that back because he doesn't deserve this much attention. But I thought it was really funny that Rosie Gray and Eli Lake are now both fans of Michael Tracy. How weird is that? That two of the new neocons that I went after in my film A Very Heavy Agenda Part 2 now really like Michael Tracy's Russiagate debunking stuff. Like, how did that happen? I mean, Eli Lake and Rosie Gray were like literally instrumental participants in pushing the Cold War II propaganda. Like that was their main gig for like 2 whole years. I mean, it's really weird. Um, so maybe they've come around. I mean, I know Eli Lake pretends that he thinks that like Russiagate went too far and stuff, but what do they actually believe now? And it's also weird to me that Michael Bloomberg employs Josh Rogan and Eli Lake, who arguably were two of the most influential Cold War 2.0 neocons in journalism, like for the last 5 years. So that's a really odd thing too. Um, but strangely, Josh Rogan, who's now currently working for Bloomberg, posted a Twitter thread where he was poking holes in all these Michael Bloomberg foreign policy positions, acting like he's too much of a dove and he's not a neocon enough. So that I thought that was kind of interesting that he was going against his own employer and sort of tipping over into the allegiance for the neocon think tanks that also like, puppeteer him. Why are people allowed to rebrand themselves, says John. Well, that's really creepy, Jason. Yeah, I mean, it makes me nervous, honestly, to be in a position to even have anybody, if it's true or not, what this person told you, to have that information and to be told that, like that would creep me out. I've been told things over time about 9/11 that I have never heard anywhere else, that have deeply, deeply creeped me out, and that I've tried to talk to some other 9/11 researchers about, but they think that they're crazy theories. Um, but yet they were told to me by people who, I find pretty goddamn credible, who have like no, they're not even like truthers, they're just people who work in government. Um, and I mean, even what happened to Dylan, Jason, with God, what's his name? The only survivor, the last survivor from World Trade Center 7. Even what happened with him. I mean, and I know that spooked Dylan. We talked about it. I mean, that whole situation, uh, like it's yeah, Barry Jennings. Yep, yep, yeah, Barry Jennings. In case you guys don't know, Dylan, I believe, was the only person to exclusively interview Barry Jennings, and Barry Jennings believed that there were still bodies, or that people died in the tower. He said some things that really contradict the official story, but the main thing was that there were explosives used, that he, was the last person out. Um, oh wow, you did a Wired magazine interview for 2 hours yesterday. Did they interview Dylan also, Jason? Was this for Loose Change? Um, God, Wired magazine's such a shit show. So weird too how many of those journalists from Wired magazine like got involved in things like the anthrax investigations. Like Spencer Ackerman, I think, comes from Wired magazine, and yeah, he's kind of put out a limited hangout narrative about anthrax. It's like very obvious to me that it's a limited hangout. Oh wow, bayonets and harmonicas. You were red pilled in 2016 after watching Loose Change about 9/11. Wow, that's awesome. Um, what did you think of A Very Heavy Agenda? Did you watch that before you saw Loose Change? Um, because it should be no surprise to anybody that there's definitely some barely coded 9/11 truth moments in that movie. I mean, fundamentally, the movie is sort of based off of a framework of believing that something is very fishy about 9/11. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's really cool. I'm wondering what kind of effect it would have had on you had you watched it before Loose Change. Oh, it's on the 15th anniversary of Loose Change. Okay. Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, if you're operating journalistically, even if you're as, off the radar as people like Jason are. Jason has a lot more subscribers and views on his video than I do in during these episodes. But even if you're someone at his level who's still relatively off the radar, of mainstream media, um, getting some kind of juicy source or tidbit about what could have possibly been a U.S. government conspiracy to murder 3,000 Americans in broad daylight, I mean, that's scary no matter who you are. Like, and I think that's something that we don't think about enough in this country is like, if we actually believe that these things happen and we're investigating them and we're serious about investigating them, then we are putting ourselves on some level at risk. Like we are sticking our neck out there in a dangerous scenario to some degree. Um, that comes with the territory. And that's something that I struggle with is how do you actually have the courage while still keeping in your mind, I'm investigating something or I've been given exclusive information that could shed light on some kind of false flag terrorist attack that the U.S. government did that killed American citizens. Um, I think that it's something that we need to seriously think about more. I mean, you could do one thing. You could just ignore it and be like, well, I'm not going to worry about that. Um, but then you have to think about, well, what if you do randomly one day come across something that can actually undermine this whole facade? What happens if you're handed some kind of document? Like, what would have happened to me? I mean, I've thought about this before. I don't know if you guys have listened to my Matt DeHart interview, where he believes and he has seen documents that were leaked saying that this anthrax came from the CIA. That from all the evidence that he got, and he was spoken to by an FBI whistleblower, that he was convinced and he had information that proved to him that the CIA did the 2001 anthrax attacks. Now, what would have happened if Matt DeHart or his parents sent me that cache of documents like one day? What if a thumb drive appeared in my mailbox? I mean, just where I am right now in my life, I would be scared. I would be freaked out. But at the same time, like, what would I do? Like, would I, what would I do? What would I want to do to not be scared? Throw the documents away, pass them to another journalist, straight to WikiLeaks, like Peppo said. Well, straight to WikiLeaks. Why? Yeah, you know what? I don't trust it. I don't trust it, man. WikiLeaks does curate their documents and removes information from them. They remove names. They remove sometimes coordinates. They have actually done a relatively good job. Everyone accuses them of putting American soldiers in danger or whatever. WikiLeaks has done a really good job of making sure that that doesn't happen by curating and removing information from their documents. This is something that they've openly admitted to doing from the very beginning. So I do not trust an organization like WikiLeaks to put out something like this. I don't. That doesn't mean I don't think WikiLeaks does good work. I would almost trust someone like Cryptome to put it out. That guy, I think that guy is like more hardcore than WikiLeaks, to be honest. He like posted Laura Poitras's like home address. He's just like, fuck all the Intercept people. I'm doxing everybody. And he like posted that shit on his website. And I already told you guys yesterday on a previous episode that I believe that WikiLeaks deliberately hid the second video that they promised they were going to put out. And if you remember, it was originally 2 videos they promised to put out. Collateral Murder, showing the murder of journalists in Iraq during the Bush administration, and the Garani Massacre video, showing a bombing under the Obama administration in Afghanistan that killed up to 100 civilians. Now, WikiLeaks did not release that second video, and I was told that they suppressed it deliberately. Now, that's not their version of events. They say that a defector stole the video, and it's like ruined now, and it can't be watched by anybody. I don't buy that. So ever since then, I don't think I would ever trust WikiLeaks to effectively release whatever I gave them. And that's just my own personal take on it. But back to my original point, I just think that we're not like superheroes. Like, the people doing this work are not invulnerable people, We're all meat sacks, Like, this is all, and this is serious stuff that we're trying to do. It's not just like jerk off, like, oh, World Trade Center, rubble, like, oh, let's be like truthery and jerk off to ourselves. It's not like that. It's like actually really serious for us. Like, we seriously believe that the U.S. government probably did do a great deal of what happened on that day. People inside it. So that's a serious thing, because that's mass murder, and those people are still free. Whoever sent anthrax is still free. There is a bioterrorist in a high position of power still free, or a group of bioterrorists still free in this country doing whatever the hell they want. That's a scary thought. And that contradicts the idea that we live in any semblance of a democracy as well. If these two things could be gotten away with by these powerful people, and yeah, I mean, I know these are pretty dark thoughts. Well, it's cool that Jason and John are in here. I like that I have some of these like respectable, intelligent people from the 9/11 truth scene in here who have been in it for a long time, because I don't know if you guys noticed, but there's not very many of us left out there. um, and most of the people who are still good are mostly older dudes who don't spend very much time on the internet. Um, you have a good point. You are respectable. You have a good point. But I don't know your work. I don't know if you have some work out there. If any of you guys also do work, like blogs, you make videos, just so you know, I figured out a way to activate posting URLs in the chat now. So you are completely free to post whatever you want. Also, you should be able to say fuck, cunt, suck a cock, whatever the hell you want in the chat now, and it won't block it. And I hope that you guys test that out for me right now, because I wanna see if that works. Love dropping C-bobs. Trish, is the C word or the T word in Australia similar to how it's used in the UK or in Britain? Like, can you sort of casually use the word cunt and call someone that as like an insult, or does it have a more charged term in Australia? Because I guess I throw it around a lot, and I worry sometimes people think I'm like using it misogynistically. So I never ever refer to any woman as that term. But I watch a lot of like British TV. Trish, I've seen your podcast for sure. You have some good stuff about veganism. No, it's not used here. Oh, I'm surprised. Is there like a sweary slang term that's used in Australia that sounds really vulgar that's not as vulgar in Australia? Twat. Uh, One of my favorite shows of all time, called The Thick of It, on British TV. The amount of like profanity, C words, T words, F bombs, it's incredible. The main character on it, one of the main characters, Malcolm Tucker. Some of the best sweary rants you'll ever hear in anything, honestly. Um, well, I'm glad you think it's a beauty that I smoke a joint on my podcast. I'm just doing what Joe Rogan does, dude. Why can't I smoke a joint on my podcast? I'm just kidding. No, it did get blocked. So the word, I guess, got blocked. You have a good point. Was able to type twat in the chat. She capitalized it, but it went through. Um, but I didn't see your cunt pop up there, Peppo. Sorry about that. Alex, are you a Chris Morris fan? Alex asks. To be completely honest, I am and I'm not. I have mixed feelings about him. I think he's brilliant. I think he's actually probably one of the most brilliant comedy writers ever. Like in like the 2000s and beyond. And even I think he was even doing stuff in the 90s that was really good. But I have a problem with Four Lions. And I think that uh, I didn't care for it. I still have problems with it. Um, I get it. I guess over time I'm less like reactive towards it, but I still find it a very problematic movie that plays into war on terror tropes in a way that I'm not a fan of. Even his new movie, even though it's sort of critiquing the war on terror, uh, it's I don't know. He's in some dicey territory there, so I'll have to watch it to see how I feel about it. But it's like I don't know if you guys saw this, but Chris Morris's newest movie is about like a black Israeli guy who's like a total lunatic who has like his own cult, who is being framed by the FBI, or they're trying to set him up to do some kind of terrorist attack so they can arrest him. Carl, that's weird. So I guess they'll let your comments come through, but not the actual swear words. That's really strange. Tom Collector, um, can you comment on why Kevin Barrett acts like you and Abby reject 9/11 truth? In particular, Abby. I have a relative who will not shut up about this. He's a big Barrett fan. Oh, geez, that's interesting. Um, yeah, it's a long. It'll take me a long time to comment on that because um, I mean, it's true that Abby and I probably both, we we were like really hardcore 9/11 truthers a long time ago. I mean, like that's sort of like we were both much more involved, and that was our entry point into politics. Not into politics, but like I think it really sort of radicalized us. It was very formative for us. Um, but I mean, it's I think just in a general sense, it's not our focus anymore. But yeah, it's hard for me to speak on that. I'll have to give that some thought. And I mean, not to like answer for Kevin Barrett's accusations, but just in general, if people are wondering why we don't talk about it as much anymore, um, we definitely don't reject it. I mean, uh, you'll hear that from our podcast. We still talk about it. We bring it up quite often. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that for a lot of people who were really hardcore truthers, um, they on some level felt like you know abandoned by the fact that it's not our focus anymore. Um, and I could sympathize with that to a certain extent. But the Kevin Barrett thing specifically is a little different. Um, I think I already told you about that he like invited someone else on his podcast to like assess me and Abby, and then didn't even like reach out to us, either of us, for a comment. Um, and I sort of took that as like he's just waging like an information war against us. It didn't really seem like he was actually trying to figure out what was going on. Um, so I won't, I have a lot of beef with him for other reasons too. Um, Bayonets and harmonicas, that's interesting. He says I never cared at all about modern politics till I opened my eyes about 9/11. Very interesting. No name. What did you think of Netanyahu practically responding directly on Twitter to the lawsuit Abby is bringing against the state of Georgia? Um, I thought that was really creepy. I mean, it could have been a total coincidence, but I thought it was really, really creepy, and it really upset me. And yeah, that was my honest reaction to it. That was really, um, really unsettling, to say the least. Oh wow, we've really been going for over an hour and no video games yet. Now another political MAME politics. That's good, right? Tom, we can speak more about that sometime. Um, I have other suspicions about why he's so fixated on us. Um, no name. Real talk. Real talk. It's I don't want to go too much in that direction, thought wise or content wise here. But yeah, that's real talk. It's scary. Um, that tweet by the Prime Minister of Israel seemed like it was about Abby. I mean, that was scary. Um, and she's fucking brave for doing it. So, oh wow, that was way too loud. Sorry. Okay, so I'm gonna play Samurai Shodown 1. Lori is home, so she might stop by and say hi. Um, oh, cool, JC. JC says he was lucky enough to have Mickey Huff as a professor at DVC, due to open my eyes to a lot. Wait, I wasn't even paying attention when I selected my character. That was weak. Sorry. I'm gonna redo that. So in this game, they have a palette swap of one of the characters. This guy, Galford. Oh damn, that's a short. I didn't want to pick her. Anyway, so whatever. They have a palette swap of Hanzo and Galford. Hanzo has a mask on. Galford doesn't. So one of the cool things about this game that I remember even being like impressed by as a kid when I played it was that the backgrounds are interactive. And it was also, I think besides Pit Fighter, it might have been the only fighting game to use the zoom in, zoom out stage effect. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but it was the first one I had ever seen. And there are also fatalities in this game, which I don't think most people realize. And I've actually never pulled one off. They're not very easy to pull off. It has to be like your last hit, I think. because there's no like fatality prompts, you know, like finish him thing. So fun too, the way that the slowdown in the game like affects all the animations sprites on the screen. So like the people in the background's animation cycle is the same, like whatever processor is controlling it, it's like slows down with the gameplay slowdown. My excuse for sucking on the first round of this game is that I don't know this character. And I accidentally picked her. Oh, dude, Jason Vermis. Eternal Champions is... I mean, it's probably, in terms of a fighting game, it's probably the only great fighting game ever made exclusively for a console. Only 2-player fighting game. Like an early console. Like 90s and earlier. It didn't just have Jason saying Eternal Champions had great cutscenes on the Sega CD and solid gameplay mechanics, which sadly could never really complete with even the Neo Geo big boys. Never really compete with the Neo Geo big boys. Yeah, they couldn't. I thought it was great though. Let's be this crazy motherfucker. Eternal Champions also had fatalities and really interesting special moves. A lot of the characters had conceptual special moves that were really different than other fighting games. Kind of also more in the vein of Mortal Kombat style special moves. Like there were characters where you could freeze your opponent, teleporting moves, invisibility moves, stuff like that. Shit. Also, this stage has some of the worst music in the game. And one of the things that bugs me about Samurai Shodown 1 that I'm remembering now because I haven't played it for so long is that the stages and the opponents cycle in the same order every time you play it. So you always have to fight Galford at the beginning and play on this dumb boat stage. And what's cool about Samurai Shodown is it's actually very like kabuki Japanese like themed. And so a lot of the music and stuff in it is like very traditional Japanese style. So this stage is actually like a bad example of, I think, how cool this game actually is. It's just like this weird rock song. It sounds kind of like a weak Street Fighter track in a way. This is like a bad Guile stage vibe. So I gotta beat this stage for you guys at least, and get to one of the more Japanesey. Oh, the computer AI in this game, the guy's just blocking the whole time. It's like, it's not that it's incredibly difficult, it's just that he's been blocking so many of my moves. Oh, fuck. Pow. Oh, god damn you. Fuck. God. several hits off me. I didn't get anything off him. Jesus. Fuck. Oh, man. He's killing me. Jesus Christ. Wow. You got utterly destroyed on another game in front of everybody. I think I'm actually going to go to Samurai Shodown 2 because I might be able to showcase for you a little bit more of the coolness of this game earlier on in it since I'm sucking so bad right now. And maybe the AI of this one's cranked down lower than the first one was. We'll see. So this is Samurai Shodown 2. I think it uses a lot of the same sprites from the first game. Some of them are redrawn. Like this guy looks like he's redrawn. Galford looks a little different. Yeah, this is more what I was thinking. The only thing that's kind of a bummer about this game compared to Street Fighter and some of the other games is it would be like if the fierce punch button in Street Fighter was like the most powerful attack in the entire game. You have a strong slash button in this game, and it takes off so much of your life bar, it's kind of like ridiculous. It almost renders some of the special moves in the game useless. Yeah, you can throw projectiles, but I don't fucking remember any of the special moves. Damn. This is way easier than Samurai Shodown 1's AI is cranked up to. This is cranked down pretty low, actually. I want to throw projectiles, Carl, so maybe I should pick another character that can, because I don't think this guy does. Also, does anyone else have this problem when playing on fighting games? I am really much better at playing fighting games from the right side of the control stick. In terms of like doing, so if I'm on the right side of the opponent, it's easier for me to do like quarter circle forwards and those kinds of special moves. But from the other direction, it's a lot harder for me to do that. Harder for me to coordinate my hands in the right direction. So this is his stage again. Redone, I guess, for Samurai Shodown 2. But this time it looks like I'm going to beat him, so let's just keep strong slashing his ass when I get to the next stage. It's so weird that you can get health during the fight. It just like falls out of these barrels. Shit. God, this is so much easier than the computer AI on part 1. It's insane. That shark in the background looks pretty cool. Shit. Oh no. Dunzo. Trolls back, says Bandits and Roboticas. It's so weird that like when the trolls, some of the trolls come, there's also like name dropping of other people's channels and stuff. It's just such a weird thing. It's like damn. Damn. Strong slash. Let's get a strong slash my way out of this jam. God damn it. No. Yes. Strong slash. Always gets the upper hand. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, how many? I wonder how many total of you are in the chat right now. Seems like maybe about 12, 15 of you, maybe total. So I'm curious who all these other people are that are watching that aren't interacting with us. And I wonder if some of them even know there's a chat up sometimes, because it's like I'll just be randomly talking to you guys and just randomly responding to comments without reading them. So that must be a little weird. Oh, my POW. Let's see, my POW. Did I lose my POW meter right there? Those are projectiles, I guess, right? Kind of. I love some of the intentional slowdown in this game. This game seems to have both what appears to be intentional and unintentional slowdown. Like some of the hits, you know, like at the end of the rounds, it's like Street Fighter style. Kind of like when your last hit's like, you fly up into the air like that. That's obviously, you know, kind of almost like a freeze frame. Hi Jetty, how's it going? Yeah, if you're a lurker and you have access to the chat, just say hi. Say hey. John says, Robbie, you should write a book. I'll write a book where I transcribe episodes of MAME Politics. Hey guys. Hey lurkers. Samurai Shodown kick. Maybe I'll just go through all the games before I leave you guys. I mean, might as well, right? Let's do it. Screw it. I got them all right here. This is Samurai Shodown 3. which for some reason I remember playing more than any of the other ones. And I think they actually made new sprites for this one. Maybe not though. Some of them look the same. Actually no, he looks new. I don't know. Does that look like a new sprite? I can't tell. Oh wow, we're both doing the same move. That's crazy. So I think this game actually brought out air blocking, where the other games did not have it before. So the fighting mechanics are more change. Like the jump from 1 to 2, it was not as big as the jump from 2 to 3. They did a lot. Oh shit. Yeah, the sprites definitely look different to me in this. Just a little, like, maybe they're touched up or... Oh, shit. Ass destroyed. Jeez. Oh shit. Watch someone who's really bad at video games play video games, talk about politics. Okay, so here's Samurai Shodown 4. That was a quick exit. Actually, no, this is the one I played more. Samurai Shodown 4. Wasn't 3. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be any better at it. It's Valentine's Day tomorrow, John. It's tomorrow. This one has 2 life bars. I forgot about that. What happened to the sound? Weird. It's just music? Do you guys... That's weird. I'm only hearing music now. Very strange. All right, well, just going to continue to suck really bad. I need to brush up on my Samurai Shodown. So, thank you guys again for joining me on MAME Politics, episode 31, where we went through 4 Samurai Shodown games, and I did terribly at all of them. Join me again tomorrow, Friday, Valentine's Day, for episode 32 of MAME Politics. And yeah, suggest some games to me to play. Suggest some topics, and I'll be happy to discuss them on the next episode. Sometimes I want to discuss all the things you guys are bringing up in the chat, but it's hard to get to all of them. So yeah, if you give me a heads up on Twitter or something with something you'd like me to discuss, that'd be easier. But yeah, thank you guys so much again for hanging out, chatting. Goodbye, everybody. No, Lori's not going to be here during the day for Valentine's Day. But on Saturday, she's joining me for a 2-player MAME Politics, Tom. So, yeah, Saturday afternoon, we're going to do that. Thank you again, everybody. Good night.